There is a darkness so complete that the human eye never adjusts to it. Not after minutes, not after hours, not after days. It is the darkness found hundreds of meters below the surface of the Earth, where sunlight has never reached, where no star has ever shone, and where the silence is so absolute that the only sound is the beating of one's own heart. In this darkness, the air itself feels thick, heavy, ancient. It carries the weight of stone pressing down from above, millions of tons of rock separating the living from the world of light. The temperature holds steady, indifferent to seasons, indifferent to time, indifferent to the fragile creatures who dared to descend into the abyss. This is the underground world. And against all logic, against every survival instinct encoded in the human body, people lived here, not for hours, not for days, for weeks, sometimes longer. They ate here, they slept here, they raised children here, they buried their dead here, and somehow, impossibly, they survived. The question that emerges from the archaeological record is not simply whether ancient humans could endure such conditions. The evidence proves they did. The deeper question is how. How did prehistoric and early historic people survive underground with no natural light, limited air circulation, and often no clear means of escape? How did they manage the oxygen that their lungs required, the fire that their survival demanded, and the psychological terror that darkness inevitably brings? The answers lie scattered across continents, buried in caves and tunnels, preserved in the silent testimony of bones, tools, and the soot-stained ceilings of subterranean chambers. These answers reveal something profound about human ingenuity and something equally profound about human desperation. The relationship between humans and caves stretches back hundreds of thousands of years. Caves offered natural shelter from predators, storms, and the killing cold of ice ages. But the caves that early humans first occupied were fundamentally different from the deep underground environments that later became refuges. Early cave habitation occurred primarily near entrances, where daylight still penetrated and fresh air circulated freely. The twilight zone of a cave, that transitional space between the sunlit world and total darkness, provided adequate protection without demanding the extreme adaptations that deeper occupation would require. The transition from twilight zone habitation to true underground survival happened gradually, driven by necessity rather than choice. As human populations grew and conflicts intensified, as climates shifted and resources became scarce, some communities found themselves pushed deeper into the earth. Others chose the underground deliberately, recognizing that the same darkness that terrified also concealed, that the same isolation that threatened also protected. In regions where warfare was constant, where invaders burned villages and slaughtered inhabitants, the underground became the last sanctuary. In Cappadocia, a region of central Anatolia in modern Turkey, entire cities were carved into soft volcanic rock. Derinkuyu, the deepest of these underground settlements, extends approximately 60 meters below the surface and could shelter an estimated 20,000 people along with their livestock and food supplies. The construction of these underground cities began as early as the 8th century BCE, with significant expansion occurring during periods of invasion and religious persecution. The inhabitants did not simply dig holes in the ground. They engineered complex systems designed to sustain life indefinitely in conditions that would otherwise kill within days. The most immediate threat to underground survival is not hunger or thirst, it is suffocation. The human body consumes oxygen with every breath and expels carbon dioxide in return. In an enclosed space, this simple biological process becomes lethal. Oxygen levels drop while carbon dioxide accumulates. The air grows stale, then dangerous, then deadly. The first symptoms are subtle: headaches, confusion, difficulty concentrating. The final symptoms are not subtle at all. Consciousness fades, the heart slows, death follows. The engineers of Derinkuyu understood this threat with remarkable sophistication. They constructed ventilation shafts that extended from the deepest levels all the way to the surface, some reaching depths of 50 meters or more. These shafts served multiple purposes. They provided fresh air through natural convection, as cooler underground air rose and warmer surface air descended to replace it. They also functioned as wells, allowing access to groundwater that filtered through the porous rock. The placement of these shafts was not random. Archaeological analysis suggests careful planning to ensure airflow reached all occupied areas while minimizing the structural weakening of the surrounding stone. But Derinkuyu was the achievement of a sophisticated civilization with centuries of accumulated knowledge. The question of how earlier humans managed underground air quality presents a more challenging puzzle. Evidence from prehistoric cave sites suggests that even ancient humans recognized the danger of depleted air. At Lascaux in France, the famous painted cave that dates to approximately 17,000 years ago, the deepest chambers show evidence of limited occupation. The artists who created the magnificent paintings ventured deep enough to work, but did not attempt to live in the most remote sections. The pattern of occupation traces follows the availability of breathable air. Other sites reveal more active management of underground atmosphere. In the Nawarla Gobernmang rock shelter in northern Australia, evidence suggests that Aboriginal inhabitants modified the natural structure to improve airflow. Similar modifications appear at sites across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Humans learned to recognize which underground spaces offered adequate natural ventilation and how to enhance that ventilation through strategic openings. They learned that the movement of air could be felt on the skin, heard in subtle whispers, observed in the behavior of flames. Fire became both a tool and a danger. Fire was essential to underground survival. It provided light in absolute darkness, heat in the constant cool of subterranean spaces, a means of cooking food, a method of purifying water, and a psychological anchor against the terror of the unseen. But fire consumed oxygen and produced smoke. In an enclosed space, fire could kill as efficiently as it could save. The archaeological evidence reveals that ancient underground dwellers developed sophisticated techniques for managing fire. At many sites, fire pits appear positioned near natural air currents, where smoke would be drawn toward ventilation points rather than accumulating in living spaces. Some sites show evidence of constructed smoke channels, deliberate modifications that directed combustion products away from occupied areas. The type of fuel mattered enormously. Different materials produced different amounts of smoke, burned at different temperatures, and consumed oxygen at different rates. Fat-burning lamps, which appear at sites across prehistoric Europe, offered controlled light with minimal smoke. Stone lamps carved from soft rock and filled with animal fat could burn for hours with only a small wick, providing enough illumination for navigation and basic tasks without dangerously compromising air quality. The famous lamps found at La Mouth Cave in France date to approximately 15,000 years ago, demonstrating that the technology for controlled underground lighting existed deep in prehistory. Yet even with managed fire and adequate ventilation, the psychological challenges of underground survival remained formidable. Humans are creatures of light. The circadian rhythms that govern sleep, hormone production, and cognitive function depend on regular exposure to natural illumination. In total darkness, these rhythms begin to drift. Time loses meaning. Sleep becomes fragmented and irregular. Mood deteriorates. The psychological literature on modern cave explorers and submariners documents the profound mental strain that extended darkness produces. Ancient underground dwellers faced these same challenges without any understanding of the biological mechanisms involved. The evidence suggests that ancient communities developed cultural and social strategies to compensate for the psychological burdens of underground life. At Cappadocian underground cities, communal spaces appear positioned at regular intervals along corridors and chambers. These spaces would have provided opportunities for social interaction, for the maintenance of community bonds that anchored individuals against despair. Religious spaces, identified by carved niches and ceremonial arrangements, appear even in the deepest levels. Faith and ritual may have provided the psychological structure that biology could not. The management of waste and food storage presented additional challenges that required sophisticated solutions. Human waste in an enclosed space creates not only offensive odors but genuine health hazards. Decomposing organic matter produces dangerous gases and attracts disease-carrying organisms. Archaeological evidence from underground sites reveals designated latrine areas, often positioned near ventilation points or water flows that would carry waste away from living spaces. At Derinkuyu, separate chambers appear to have functioned as latrines, with design features suggesting intentional planning for waste management. Food storage in underground environments offered both advantages and complications. The constant cool temperatures of caves and tunnels provided natural refrigeration, extending the viability of preserved foods. But moisture levels in many underground spaces promoted mold growth and spoilage. Sites in various locations show evidence of food storage in specialized containers, elevated platforms that kept supplies away from damp floors, and chambers positioned in drier sections of underground complexes. The knowledge required to successfully store food underground represented generations of accumulated experience, passed from parent to child, from community to community. The social organization of underground communities demanded adaptations as significant as the physical modifications. In darkness and confinement, the structures that governed surface life required transformation. Leadership became more critical, as coordinated response to emergencies could mean the difference between survival and catastrophe. Yet authority also became more difficult to maintain, as the usual markers of status and power became invisible in the dark. The archaeological record cannot directly reveal how ancient people organized their underground societies, but the physical layout of underground spaces offers suggestive evidence. Some sites show clear hierarchies in the allocation of space, with larger and better ventilated chambers apparently reserved for particular individuals or families. The most remarkable aspect of ancient underground survival was not any single innovation, but the integration of multiple solutions into coherent systems. Ventilation, fire management, food storage, waste disposal, and social organization all had to function together. A failure in any single system could cascade into total catastrophe. The people who successfully survived weeks or months underground were not merely lucky. They were the inheritors of accumulated knowledge, the beneficiaries of countless experiments, many of which ended in death. Every successful underground shelter represented generations of learning purchased at terrible cost. The underground survivors of prehistory and early history offer a mirror to modern humanity. Their adaptations reveal the remarkable plasticity of human behavior, the capacity to endure conditions that seem impossible, and the ingenuity that emerges when alternatives have been exhausted. They also reveal the permanent costs of extreme survival. Living underground for extended periods changed people. It left physical traces in bones weakened by vitamin D deficiency, in teeth damaged by gritty diets, in joints stressed by cramped postures. It left psychological traces that archaeology cannot directly measure, but that anthropological studies of more recent underground communities suggest were profound. Today, humans continue to seek refuge underground. Subway systems become shelters during bombardments. Bunkers wait beneath government buildings and private homes. The instinct to descend, to hide, to find safety in the ancient darkness persists. The technology has changed. The fundamental human response has not. When the surface becomes too dangerous, humans look downward. They always have. And in that darkness, they find not only terror but also resilience, not only despair but also adaptation. They find the extraordinary capacity that has carried humanity through ice ages and wars, through famines and catastrophes. They find survival